Jack Ryan, who is now the head of the TFED, gives a lecture at a college. During the lecture, he mentions that while the world fears China and Russia, the real threat is actually Venezuela. He explains that Venezuela holds the largest reserves of gold and oil, and it's only a few miles away from the United States. The relationship between America and Venezuela is already quite strained. Senator Jim Moreno attends the lecture as well, since Jack now works with him. After the lecture, Jim praises Jack's analysis and invites him over for dinner. At Jim's house, Jack meets Jim's wife. Jack and Jim have known each other for a long time. Years ago, in Afghanistan, Jim had saved Jack's life. While they are having drinks, a CIA agent arrives with some files that Jack had requested. In those files, they discover that several containers are being unloaded in the jungles of Venezuela, guarded by armed forces from the Venezuelan military. Jack finds this alarming and discusses it with Jim. They decide to bring the matter to Senator Chaplin. Jack suggests they send a team to Venezuela to investigate the containers. However, since Chaplin knows that U.S. relations with Venezuela are already on thin ice, he suggests that Jack and Jim go there as diplomats. He advises them to ask the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Reyes, directly about the situation. Jack is feeling uneasy as he arrives in Venezuela. They are welcomed by the U.S. ambassador, Judy, and General Abari, who is a close friend of the president and has been an advisor since childhood. Judy and the general take Jack and Jim directly to the president's house. As they discuss their findings with the general, he denies any involvement in arms dealing. He explains that with the way things are going in their country, this type of activity is normal, and the U.S. should not be worried about it. Jack disagrees with the general, and the atmosphere becomes tense. When Jack asks about the soldiers in the area, the general responds by saying that anyone can dress up in a uniform and claim to be a soldier of Venezuela, so that doesn't prove anything. He tells them to leave the palace. This response frustrates both Jack and Jim, but they remain silent and exit the meeting quietly. Judy, trying to ease the situation, takes them away from the palace to discuss things further. Meanwhile, the president's lawyer, Monica, hires an assassin named Max to kill Jack and Senator Jim. Max requests a local police contact to help him with this job. The female lawyer responds that loyalty in Venezuela can be easily bought, allowing him to acquire whatever he needs without difficulty. Max receives his payment and heads out. He soon meets with a police captain and bribes him with cash to gain his cooperation. Later, Jack is enjoying a drink when Jim arrives. Jim tells Jack he must try the local rum and offers to treat him to some Venezuelan food. Jim reveals that he grew up in Venezuela before his parents moved to America. As they chat and enjoy each other's company, Greer meets them and Jim offers Greer to accompany them. Greer is the chief of the Moscow CIA station, and he receives a tip about Venezuela launching a satellite that no one seems to know about. Shortly after, he develops a heart condition, which leads his superior to suggest he either take a desk job or retire. For Greer, the thought of being desk-bound is unbearable. He decides to request a transfer to Venezuela, hoping to follow this lead. He suspects that Jack is also there, pursuing the same investigation. When Jim invites Greer to join them, Greer initially declines, claiming he is too tired. However, Jim insists, and Greer eventually agrees to go with them. As soon as Jim steps away to grab something, Greer discusses the situation with Jack. Jack suggests they each try to gather information separately and then share what they learn. Greer agrees to this plan, feeling it is the best way to handle their investigation. At the bar, Jack notices a very attractive woman named Harry who keeps glancing at him. When Jim steps away, Jack approaches her, offers her a drink, and they end up heading to his room together. They share a passionate night together. When Jack is in the deep sleep, Harry plants a bug in his room. The next day, as Jack and Jim prepare to leave, the police captain in charge of their security diverts their car in a different direction. Suddenly, a blast erupts under one of their escort cars. Many people are injured, but since Jack and Jim's car is armored, they suffer only minor injuries. Meanwhile, Max, positioned on a nearby rooftop, takes out a security guard who Jack was trying to help. Jack quickly realizes they need to move Senator Jim and Judy to a safe location. As they make their way, Jack adjusts their escape routes to avoid the threat. While Jack is guiding Senator Jim to a safer corner, Max shoots Jim and he dies on the spot. Jack wants to rush in to help, but Jim warns him not to expose himself, otherwise, the sniper could kill him too. Jack feels helpless, watching Jim. Just then, police arrive, and Jack manages to escape with Judy. But the situation is chaotic and filled with tension. When the police captain returns home, he is met with a devastating scene. His entire family has been brutally murdered. The shock hits him hard, and he struggles to process the horrific reality of the situation. As he tries to gather his thoughts, his dog barks at someone. Then an intruder reveals himself from the other room. He has hidden his face, but he is actually Mateo Bastos, the head of security for the Reyes, and he is there to kill Captain to erase all the proof of assassination of Jim. The captain quickly realizes it, but Mateo shoots at him. Captain gives Mateo a tough time. A fierce fight erupts between them, both men fully aware of what is at stake. The captain finds himself struggling to gain the upper hand against Mateo's relentless attacks. Just when it seems like Mateo is about to deal a fatal blow, the captain's loyal dog leaps into action. The dog bites Mateo's hand, providing the captain with a crucial moment to escape. Despite the dog's brave intervention, Mateo manages to stab it before it can cause more damage. The scene is chaotic, filled with the sounds of the struggle and the desperation of the captain as he makes his getaway. He rushes to the U.S. Embassy, seeking refuge and safety. Once inside, he explains everything that has happened, detailing the violent events and the loss he has suffered. Meanwhile, Mike, who is the chief of station of Venezuela, reaches out to inform Jack about the situation involving the captain. The captain reveals that he resorted to desperate actions because he needed money for his mother's medical treatment. Jack, feeling a mix of anger and sympathy, contemplates how to confront the captain but is interrupted by Mike, who steps in to prevent him from acting rashly. As Jack processes the news, he can't shake the thought of Jim's safety. With a heavy heart, he reluctantly decides to call Jim's wife to share the grim news. When he breaks the heart-wrenching news of Jim's murder to her, he is overwhelmed with sorrow. The next day, Greer insists that Jack should go back to U.S., but Jack is hesitant. Jack expresses his determination to take revenge for Jim's death, vowing to find whoever is responsible. Jack believes that Reyes is behind it all but knows he needs solid proof to back up his claims. Reluctantly, Greer agrees with Jack's plan because he understands that Jack is not one to easily listen to anyone else. Jack decides to investigate the ship that delivered the containers. He pretends to be a coffee boy and sneaks into the coast. Once aboard the ship, he tries to gather information when a man named Vander approaches him, demanding to see his ID. Just as Jack starts to speak, Harry appears, quickly claiming that Jack is a newly hired worker who doesn't yet know his way around. They attempt to leave, but Vander blocks their exit and asks Harry for her ID as well. Harry skillfully distracts him and manages to take Vander down, leaving him unconscious on the ground. Jack watches in surprise, clearly shocked by Harry's such movements. As they exit the ship, Harry tells Jack that now isn't the time for explanations but assures him she will fill him in later. Once outside, Jack asks Harry how she knows all this information about the ship and its operations. She reveals that her real name is actually Lee and that she used to be a former KSK agent. Now, she works as a private investigator. She explains that a wealthy German businessman went missing, prompting her investigation. She had received a tip-off from the last cab driver, who mentioned that the businessman's last known contact was at Cinco Palmas office, the same office involved in the shipping operations. When Jack inquires further about the businessman's line of work, Harry reveals that he officially works as a military consultant. However, she knows that his true business involves selling arms and other military supplies. This piques Jack's interest, as it could connect back to Reyes. He asks if Reyes could also be involved in the arms dealings, to which Harry replies that it's entirely possible. Then, she offers to provide Jack with some information that will help him start his investigations. When Jack questions her motives, she explains that she has a recording that could kickstart their investigation into the case. This revelation excites Jack. It feels like a crucial piece of the puzzle. Together, they realize they may be onto something significant that could lead them to uncover a larger conspiracy tied to Jim's death. The recording Harry provides turns out to be General Ubari speaking with his wife. In the recording, he expresses his concerns about Reyes's dangerous game of angering the Americans. He fears that if they discover his mistakes, the consequences could be severe. He mentions the secret poll that has been created, indicating that Gloria Blonde, who is Reyes's political opponent, has a significant chance of winning the upcoming elections. Ubari's wife suggests that he should lead the country rather than Reyes, which causes Ubari to fall silent, clearly disturbed by the implications. Jack shares this recording with Greer and Mike, asserting that it proves Reyes orchestrated Jim's murder. When Greer and Mike ask about the source of this information, Jack is initially reluctant to disclose it, stating that they should only share the information and not the source. However, Greer eventually reveals that the source is the same woman he had encountered at the bar and later slept with. This revelation surprises them all, but Jack remains silent and focused on the bigger picture. He suggests that if they give this recording to Reyes, he could use it to turn Ubari against Reyes. The logic is clear. Reyes would want to eliminate Ubari to protect himself, and that could provide them with crucial information. Jack proposes they take action against Mateo, Reyes' head of security. They sabotage Mateo's car, and when he enters the garage to check it out, they hold him at gunpoint. They play the recording for him, instructing Mateo to deliver it to Reyes, warning him of the consequences if he doesn't comply. The next day, Reyes calls Jack, Mike, and Greer to the President House, announcing that they have solved Jim's murder and identified the individuals involved. He confidently states that the trial is underway, and justice will be served. Jack can't shake off the feeling that Reyes is still not involved, and he whispers to Reyes that he knows Reyes orchestrated the murder and that he will find proof soon. As they prepare to leave, Jack notices Mateo's arm, which has fresh bite marks, indicating a struggle. He becomes more suspicious of Mateo's involvement in the case as he has killed the captain's family and later also tried to kill him. Jack immediately exits the building, urging Mike to go directly to the captain and questions him of Mateo's connection to the attack. When Mike enters the holding cell where Captain is, he is shocked to find that he has been murdered, lying lifeless on the ground. The scene is chaotic, leaving Jack and Mike shocked. Jack returns to his hotel room and immediately notices that the bathtub faucet is running. As he goes to turn it off, Max suddenly attacks him from behind, plunging him into the tub and attempting to drown him. Jack struggles fiercely, fighting for every breath as he grapples with Max's overwhelming strength. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Jack gathers all his strength and fights back. Max tries to suffocate Jack. In a moment of desperation, Jack manages to reach into his pocket, pulling out a knife and stabbing Max in the eye. This causes Max to recoil in pain, allowing Jack the chance to escape. Greer, who has been in a nearby room reading Quran, hears Jack's muffled shouts for help and rushes in. He finds Jack gasping for air and asks about his well-being. Jack sends Greer to follow Max. However, Greer's heart condition starts to take its toll, making it difficult for him to follow Max completely. Jack, recovering from the attack, goes to Greer where he is gasping for air. Jack asks him that about his health, to which Greer brushes it off. Jack quickly pulls out a sketch from his pocket, the one the captain had made of Max during the investigation at the U.S. Embassy. He shows it to Harry while entering her room and asks if she recognizes the man. Initially, she is silent, but under Jack's pressure, she confirms that this is indeed Max, the German businessman they are looking for. Jack's determination intensifies as he questions her about Max's connections to the recent murders, particularly Jim's. Harry seems hesitant but finally reveals that when they were younger, she and Max attended the same boarding school. After they graduated, they both joined the military. After that, Max joined KSK and later he asked Harry to join. Harry accepted the offer. She explains that during a mission in Afghanistan, she had been close to Max, and he took the blame for some of her mistakes. Despite her care for him, Jack feels a rising distrust. He believes Harry knows more than she's letting on about Max's darker activities and motivations. Feeling cornered, Harry admits that she did care for Max, but she's terrified of what he's capable of. Jack's skepticism grows as he presses her to divulge everything she knows about Max's recent actions, especially the murders for money. He senses that she is still holding back vital information, making him more frustrated and suspicious. In a burst of anger and urgency, Jack decides to leave the room, needing space to think and formulate a plan. Greer assembles a task force to inspect the containers on the ground, with Matthijs taking the lead. They require a boat driver, and after much persuasion, Matthijs hires Marcus, who, despite not being an expert sailor, is an experienced soldier. They land on the coast of Venezuela and enter the jungle together, where Jack and Greer join them. Matthijs is visibly pleased to see them both. Greer informs the team that this is strictly a search operation and that they are not to use their firearms unless absolutely necessary. As they make their way toward the compound, Matthijs updates them on their communication issues. Their radios are malfunctioning, but they will coordinate via GPS. He instructs Marcus to remain on the boat and be ready for their return, warning him not to engage with anyone. The team then heads into the compound to search the containers. As they sift through a container, they discover a German mining machine. Jack becomes increasingly puzzled by the presence of the mining equipment, suspecting that Reyes is involved in something suspicious and questioning why he would be procuring such machinery. Just as they decide to leave, Jack insists on checking a second container, which is much larger. Greer and Matthijs try to dissuade him, but Jack is adamant. Inside the second container, Jack uncovers chemicals used for mining operations. Just as he starts to delve deeper, Vander approaches him, curious about what he's doing there. Suddenly, Matthijs rushes in from behind to help Jack, dragging Vander away to safety. Jack presses Vander for answers about why he's there and what is happening, but Vander remains tight-lipped and unresponsive. Frustrated by the lack of information and time running short, Greer loses his patience. In a bold move, he cuts Vander's finger to obtain his fingerprints for identification. He tells Jack that they can extract whatever information they need from the prints. They bind Vander and leave him in the jungle. Marcus sees some of Reyes' men while he is on the boat, so he leaves the boat and hides in the jungle. Meanwhile, Vander's men find Vander, and he tells them to chase after those people. There is gunfire between the two groups. Matthijs and the others reach the boat safely, but they find out that Marcus is not there. Matthijs decides that they will come back for Marcus later. For now, they need to leave the area. Marcus feels very sad when he sees them leaving. The next day, Jack analyzes everything and Mike receives a call from superiors, who are concerned that their actions have angered Reyes, putting them at risk. Mike says he is trying to control the situation. Mike then goes to Jack to see his analysis, and Mike is surprised to see that Jack has been sleeping at the embassy. Jack explains that the first container had mining equipment worth nearly $3 million, while the second container contained ammonium nitrate, the same chemical used to make the bomb that was used in Jim's murder. He reveals that a company named Eprius is involved in the smuggling of these items and that he has linked Jim's murder to that company. Now, he just needs to connect Reyes to the Eprius. He feels he is very close to a breakthrough. When Mike asks how Jack plans to connect Reyes and the company, Jack says he will go to London as this company is London-based. Mike then sends Greer away and tells Jack that he needs to report back because, despite Jack's good work, someone from the U.S. Army is now missing due to Jack opening the second container against orders. Mike insists that Jack must return to D.C., but Jack pleads with him, explaining how close he is to solving the case. Mike ignores his request and places the tickets for D.C. on the table, stating that Jack cannot go to London. Jack then calls Senator Chaplin and reminds him of the promise made to help him whenever he needed it. Chaplin asks what he needs, so Jack tells him he needs to go to London to follow a lead. Chaplin agrees and arranges everything through his office. Meanwhile, Greer searches for Venezuela's mining minister, Blonde, online and discovers that he has been missing for a year. Greer learns that Blonde's wife, Gloria, is now running against Reyes in the elections. This leads Greer to plan a meeting with Gloria. The next day, when Greer meets Gloria, she tells him that she isn't president yet, but a person from the U.S. State Department wants to meet her. Greer mentions that this person could help find Blonde. Greer explains that they are working on a mining case and reveals that Blonde was in danger because he had learned too much about Reyes' activities, which led to his abduction. Gloria agrees to help and takes Greer to Blonde's office, where they find a stone that Blonde was working on before he disappeared. Greer takes the stone with him. After investigating, he tells Mike that the stone is actually tantalum, which is used in the tech industry for making GPS circuits in jet engines. He explains that Reyes is sourcing this material from Venezuela, but its only source was China, and due to its monopoly, the material demand is so much in the market and yet at a very high rate. He tells him that it is now called blue gold and it's worth trillions of dollars. Greer urges Mike to arrange some security for Gloria because Reyes has started threatening her. He points out that Gloria's current security mostly consists of farmers and laborers. Mike agrees and says he can take Jose with him to train her security team. Greer meets with Gloria again and informs her that Jose will train her security. She expresses her gratitude, noting that Gloria is becoming increasingly famous in Venezuela as the elections approach. Meanwhile, Max arrives in London disguised as a girl and is very angry about his eye. Jack also reaches London, and as he enters his hotel room, Harry is there with a gun pointed at Jack. She warns him that Max is there to kill him. Jack asks why he should trust her, and Harry assures him that she will help him. She then takes Jack to a restaurant where Jeremy, an MI5 officer, is sitting. Jack asks Jeremy about Epirus and mentions that the CIA suspects Epirus is involved in the murders of U.S. Senator. Jeremy confirms that MI5 has been monitoring Epirus for a long time and knows they are involved in many illegal activities. Jack requests to meet Epirus' CEO, Thorne, and Jeremy agrees. Jeremy then freezes Epirus' bank accounts, and they head to Thorne's office. At first, Thorne doesn't reveal much, but under pressure, he starts answering their questions. Jack asks if Reyes hired them for Venezuelan mining operations, to which Thorne laughs, stating they only work with wealthy clients and have been hired by a company named Vulture for that mining projects. Jack shows Thorne a sketch of Max and asks if he recognizes him. Thorne is a bit shocked but admits he knows Max, revealing they've worked together in the past. When Jack inquires about the nature of their work, Thorne goes silent but eventually mentions a company called Cinco Palms that recently hired Max. Thorne explains he only acted as a middleman, connecting parties. Jack insists Thorne call Max to meet him at the restaurant. The next day at the restaurant, Max sends another man who fits his description, found through a gay app. As the man enters to meet Thorne, MI5 officers arrest him, and he reveals that Max forced him to do it, and he threatened to kill her sister if he doesn't comply. At that moment, Max shoots Thorne, killing him instantly. Jack searches for Max and starts chasing him. He climbs to the roof of a building, but Max escapes from his grasp and jumps into the river. When Max returns home, he pulls out a camera he planted at the hotel and sees footage of Harry working with Jack to catch him, leaving him in shock. When Jack returns to the restaurant site, Jeremy asks Jack and Harry about the shooter. Harry tells him that his name is Max and he was an ex-BND officer, but now he kills people for money and now he is after Jack. Jeremy tells Harry that she needs to catch a direct flight to Germany for not telling this prior, and asks Jack for his pistol, stating that his job is done. When Jack says that Max is still out there looking for him, Jeremy replies that it's not his concern and this is over. He cautions Jack about Harry that she does only those things that benefits her only. Jack leaves the site but secretly takes Thorne's house key before slipping away. Jack then goes to Thorne's house and opens his laptop, but it's password protected. He calls his tech friend to hack into the system. After gaining access, Jack asks him to find all bank transaction details, account numbers, and other relevant information. Jack discovers several transfers linked to Max, but one transfer catches his attention because it's from Philadelphia, leaving him confused. He then calls Greer to share that he analyzed Thorne's laptop and found Max's account. He informs Greer that Thorne transferred money to Max's account the day before Jim's murder, and all these transactions were conducted through a lawyer named Monica in Venezuela. Greer replies that he will look into Monica. Harry frantically calls Jack and informs him that Max has just killed the security officer Jeremy has appointed to take her to airport. She asks him to meet, and after meeting she says that Max is now coming directly for him. With panic in her voice, she shares that Max has a daughter, and it might be the only chance for Jack to save himself. Jack, taken aback by this information, is hesitant at first. He weighs his options but realizes that Max is relentless and dangerous, leaving him no choice. Reluctantly, Jack agrees to Harry's plan, knowing that if he doesn't act quickly, Max will hunt him down and kill him without mercy. As they make their way towards King Edward University, where Max's daughter is studying, Jack and Harry move cautiously. The tension is high, and every moment feels critical. Just as they plan to go to the destination through train, Max appears on the scene. Harry, always quick to assess the situation, spots Max before he notices them. She tells Jack to go ahead on his own, reassuring him that she will stay behind to distract Max and buy him some time. Jack hesitates for a second but then moves quickly, knowing the gravity of the situation. Reaching the university, Jack heads to the library where Max's daughter is quietly reading. He approaches her carefully and asks if they can talk privately about her father. At first, she ignores him, brushing off his concern, and skeptically asks how he even knew she was in the library. Jack calmly responds that her roommate told him. He warns her that her father is in danger, but she immediately dismisses it, not believing a word Jack says. Frustrated, she pulls out a hairpin, one her father had recently gifted her, and strikes Jack's hand with it, then sprints out of the library in a panic. Jack lowers his cry of pain and immediately chases after her, his heart pounding. As he catches up to her, he tries to restrain her gently but firmly. Desperately, he tells her again that her father is in real danger. Still shaken, she responds that if her father were in any trouble, the BND would protect him. Jack, taking a deep breath, reveals the harsh truth. Her father isn't who she thinks he is. He isn't a German officer working for the BND. Instead, he's an assassin who kills people for money. The revelation leaves her shocked. He doesn't believe Jack, but her heart begins to question everything she knew about her father. In the midst of their tense conversation, Max calls his daughter. Jack answers the phone, and Max, in a serious tone, tells Jack not to hurt her, saying that he's on his way. Jack, seizing the opportunity, tells Max to meet him at the university. The confrontation is inevitable now, and Jack knows this will be the moment where everything comes to a head. When Max finally arrives at the university, Jack is ready. He faces Max and asks him directly who had hired him, suggesting that Reyes might have been the one to put him up to it. Max, however, just smiles in response, a dark and unsettling smile. He reveals that everything happening was set in motion electronically and that Reyes wasn't the one who hired him. The information takes Jack by surprise for a moment, but he doesn't have much time to react. Max suddenly reaches to pull out his gun. Before Max can make his move, Harry, who has been keeping a close eye on the situation, steps in. She doesn't hesitate and shoots Max in the head, delivering a fatal shot. Max falls to the ground, dead on the spot. The tension that had been building throughout the entire confrontation finally breaks, leaving Jack confused that who hired Max if it isn't Reyes. Harry, emotionally overwhelmed, tells Jack to leave immediately, urging him to go while she handles the aftermath. Jack, seeing the grief and conflict in her eyes, quietly listens and makes his exit. As he leaves, Harry turns to Max's lifeless body. She kneels beside him, her emotions finally getting the better of her. With tears streaming down her face, she kisses him gently, a mixture of love and sorrow evident in her actions. The weight of everything that has just happened hits her hard, and she begins to cry, overcome with grief. Jack flies straight to Venezuela after his time in London, where Greer is waiting for him at the airport. As they drive, Greer warns Jack to keep his stay in Venezuela under wraps. Jack, half joking, mocks Greer for not even booking a hotel this time. Greer shares all the details they have on Monica, the lawyer involved in the shady transactions, and they make their way to her office. Pretending to be Canadian nationals looking for investment opportunities, they put on a convincing act. However, after some time waiting, things take an unexpected turn. Suddenly, police officers storm into the office and arrest both Jack and Greer. Monica, watching from her office cameras, was already aware of their plan and had tipped off the police. The two are taken straight to the President House, where they find Reyes playing polo. With a smug expression, Reyes confronts Jack, accusing him of relentlessly pursuing him and forcing the narrative that he ordered Senator Jim's assassination. Reyes insists that he's already punished the real killer, implying the case is closed. Jack, however, bluntly counters, revealing that the real assassin, Max, had been killed just the day before in London. This leaves only two possibilities: either Reyes falsely sentenced someone else or he's still hiding the truth. The sharp accusation makes Reyes furious, his calm demeanor shattering as he declares that Jack and Greer have disrespected him. Things, he warns, are about to change. True to his word, Reyes starts stirring up anti-American sentiment across Venezuela. He uses his influence to incite mass protests, and soon, angry mobs gather outside the U.S. Embassy. They begin tearing down the gates, burning American flags, and setting vehicles on fire. The situation becomes more volatile by the second. Inside the embassy, Mike realizes the grave danger they're in. He orders everyone to prepare to leave, pushing for an emergency evacuation back to the U.S. Meanwhile, Reyes takes to national television, addressing the Venezuelan people. He claims the U.S. has violated their sovereignty by conducting covert operations on their land, and one of their own has been caught. In a bold move, Reyes announces that Venezuela is severing its ties with the United States and demands the immediate closure of the U.S. Embassy, forcing all American personnel to leave the country. The situation escalates quickly, putting Jack, Greer, and the rest of the American team in a dangerous position. Few days ago, Marcus was wandering lost in the jungle. A child had stolen his gun, leaving him defenseless. As he climbs a mountain peak, he notices smoke rising from a distance. Determined to find help, he starts heading toward it. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy is monitoring his movements through satellite images. They immediately inform Matthijs and the soldiers, who went back to retrieve him, about Marcus's direction. Matthijs takes the coordinates and begins tracking Marcus, while on the other hand, Reyes, using his own satellite, alerts Mateo about the presence of U.S. soldiers on Venezuelan soil. He instructs him to intercept and kill them, then bury the bodies in the jungle to cover their tracks. Soon, Mateo's men spot the U.S. soldiers, and a firefight erupts. Matthijs and his team retaliate with equal force. Amidst the chaos, Marcus, after hearing the gunshots, arrives and manages to push Mateo off the mountain, seizing control of the satellite controller from him. He doesn't stop there and kills the rest of Mateo's men as well by using higher ground as a leverage. Reuniting with Matthijs, they think they have a moment to breathe, but more enemy forces arrive, and another intense firefight begins. Matthijs quickly realizes the danger they are in and orders his team to split up and head in the opposite direction while he stays back to distract the enemy. Although the soldiers are reluctant, Matthijs firmly commands them to follow his order. Reluctantly, they comply and head in the other direction. Unfortunately, Matthijs is eventually overpowered by Mateo's men and brutally killed. Marcus and the remaining soldiers witness this but don't intervene, as Matthijs had instructed them not to. Reyes seizes this moment to make a bold statement. He broadcasts Matthijs's dead body on national television, claiming that the U.S. soldiers were conducting covert operations on Venezuelan soil. This broadcast escalates tensions even further, fueling anti-American sentiments across the country. The U.S. Embassy calls for immediate evacuation, and helicopters arrive to assist. All crucial data is gathered, and the American flags at the embassy are lowered, marking a grim end to the mission. At that moment, Mike calls Jack and Greer into his office and lays out the grim situation. He informs them that 2 U.S. citizens have already lost their lives, one being a U.S. senator and the other a soldier. Additionally, 3 more soldiers are still stranded in the jungle, surrounded by enemy forces. Mike makes it clear that despite these dire circumstances, he isn't willing to abandon those soldiers, but he stresses that this is a personal decision, not one supported by official orders. The decision means that no further protection or assistance will be available from the U.S. government, essentially leaving them on their own. Jack and Greer, realizing the severity of the situation, don't hesitate and agree to stand by him, fully aware of the risks involved. Mike leads them down to the embassy's basement, where they are greeted by stacks of guns, ammunition, and bundles of cash. The supplies are clearly meant for emergency situations. Mike gestures towards the bags and tells them to take as much as they can carry. Greer tries to gather the items, but due to his worsening heart condition, he finds it difficult to lift the bags. Seeing Greer's struggle, Jack quickly steps forward and grabs the bags for him, easing the burden on his partner. They fill their bags with whatever they can, preparing for what lies ahead. After packing up, Mike introduces them to Jose, who will serve as their driver. Disguised in police uniforms to avoid detection, they pile into the police vehicles. Greer is carefully laid down in the back of one of the cars. Before they drive off, Jack pulls Jose aside and instructs him to take Greer directly to the airport. Jack, worried about Greer's heart condition, believes that continuing with the mission would be too dangerous for him. Understanding Jack's concerns, Jose agrees to the plan without question. Jack then climbs into the back of another vehicle, this one driven by Mike, who is also in police uniform. As they split up and head in different directions, everything seems to be going as planned. However, when Greer's vehicle comes to a stop and he steps out of the back, something unexpected happens. Standing right in front of him is Mateo, looking as though he had been waiting for this moment. It quickly becomes apparent that Jose had betrayed them. Instead of taking Greer to safety as promised, Jose had delivered him directly to Mateo, and Greer is now in the hands of the enemy. They transport him deeper into the jungle to a hidden military compound, controlled by Mateo's forces. The situation takes a devastating turn as Greer realizes he has been led into a trap. Meanwhile, Jack and Mike arrive at the CIA's safe house. The tension is thick in the air as they try to regroup after the unsettling events. Mike immediately calls Judy to ask about Greer's whereabouts, but the response he gets is far from comforting. Judy informs him that Greer is not with them. This revelation only heightens the urgency, and without wasting any more time, both Mike and Jack set out to find Greer. As they reach their car, the situation takes a dangerous turn. Out of nowhere, a war car attacks them, firing relentlessly. But Jack, quick on his feet, manages to disable the car and causes an explosion, neutralizing the threat. They waste no time and make their way to Jose's house, hoping to uncover more about Greer's location. At Jose's house, the man is visibly shaken. When confronted, Jose reveals the terrifying truth: Mateo had threatened him, warning that if he didn't comply, both Jose and his family would be killed. Under pressure, Jose had no choice but to follow orders. Mike's face hardens as he presses Jose further, demanding to know if he was also responsible for the murder of the police captain at the embassy. With a heavy heart, Jose admits to his involvement, further cementing his role in the chain of betrayals. Jose then discloses that Greer was taken deep into the jungle and left at a military compound, under Mateo's control. Hearing this, Mike tells Jack that they need to move fast, and they prepare to leave. Jose, now desperate, pleads for his life, begging for mercy, but Mike shows no hesitation. Without a second thought, he shoots Jose on the spot, silencing him forever. As they drive away, Mike turns to Jack, his mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. He asks Jack what their next course of action should be. Jack, weighing the gravity of the situation, calmly suggests that launching an attack on the compound would be nothing short of suicide. After all, they are only 2 people against an entire military force. But then Jack brings up an alternative plan. With all the money they have, they could potentially hire more men, including soldiers, to help them execute the mission. Mike, after considering the idea for a moment, agrees with the plan, realizing it might be their only chance at survival and rescuing Greer. Meanwhile, Greer finds himself imprisoned in a grim camp. The place is filled with people who had, at some point, dared to stand against Reyes. Among them is the Minister of Mining, Blondie. Greer tries to offer some hope, telling them that tomorrow is the election day, and there's a real chance that Gloria might win. His words bring a faint glimmer of optimism to an otherwise hopeless situation, as they realize that change might still be possible if Gloria comes to power. On the other side, Mike and Jack manage to reunite with the remaining 3 soldiers who were stranded in the jungle. After assessing the situation, Jack tells Mike to stay back and make arrangements for a safe escape route while he handles the rescue mission. Jack, along with the soldiers, approaches Vander, hoping to strike a deal. Jack offers Vander a hefty sum of money, suggesting that they work together to attack the prison compound and free Greer. At first, Vander is hesitant, refusing the offer and even contemplating killing Jack to take the money for himself. Jack, sensing the danger, calmly reminds him that if he does that, he'll miss out on a lot more of 8 bags of cash waiting for him if he cooperates. Vander, still skeptical, points out that Greer was the one responsible for cutting off his finger. Jack, undeterred, simply tells him to focus on the money and the job at hand. After a tense moment, Vander agrees to the plan, seeing the potential reward as worth the risk. Together, they launch an attack on the prison compound. Guns blazing, they storm the area, but to their surprise, the place is completely empty. The compound seems abandoned, and there's no sign of Greer or anyone else. Suddenly, the sound of gunfire erupts from outside the compound. Alarmed, Jack and the others rush outside to find a group of soldiers executing prisoners and digging a massive grave to bury the bodies. The horrific scene unfolds in front of them, and Jack demands to know where the American is. He climbs into the mass grave, desperately searching for Greer, but he isn't there. Terrified, one of the soldiers reluctantly reveals that they had buried the American. Jack, along with the others, immediately starts digging frantically, hoping to find Greer alive. But instead, they uncover Matthias's dead body. The sight of their fallen comrade brings a wave of grief and frustration, but Jack doesn't give up. Just then, Blondie approaches them and delivers some critical information. He tells Jack that Mateo had taken Greer to the president house. This new piece of intel ignites a sense of urgency in Jack and the team, as they realize they're running out of time. Meanwhile, Greer is taken to the dim, cold basement of the presidential house. As he is dragged along the narrow corridor, he notices Ubari, who seems to be in a state of panic. Ubari, who looks both desperate and fearful, can't comprehend the scale of what's happening around him. He confronts Reyes, seeking answers. He tries to appeal to any remaining sense of morality in Reyes, questioning him about why he's doing all this. Ubari specifically criticizes Reyes for attacking the neighborhood where they both grew up, calling it an unnecessary act of cruelty. He believes that Reyes has gone too far and that this isn't the way things should be done. However, Reyes remains unbothered and dismissive. He coldly tells Ubari that what once was their home is no longer relevant. He says that this is their home now, indicating the power he now holds, and how far he is willing to go to maintain it. The conversation turns dark as Reyes shows no remorse for his actions. In an instant, without hesitation or warning, Reyes pulls out a knife and kills Ubari on the spot. Ubari's lifeless body crumbles to the ground, ending the conversation in a brutal and shocking manner. Meanwhile, back in his prison cell, despite the situation Greer is, he finds solace in his faith. Alone and surrounded by enemies, he kneels on the cold, hard ground and prays. His lips moves as he recites his prayers, seeking strength and guidance. He holds on to his belief, hoping that there might still be a way out of this, even as the world around him grows darker. Election day arrives, bringing with it a wave of excitement and anticipation. Polls are set up across the country, and citizens are flocking to the voting stations, eager to cast their votes and make their voices heard. Meanwhile, in the presidential house, a lavish lunch is served, filled with important figures and dignitaries, all discussing the day's events and what the outcome of the election might mean for the nation. Meanwhile, Jack finds himself in a much darker situation. He stands at the mass grave he discovered earlier, filming the gruesome scene with his camera. As he records, his heart races at the thought of the implications this evidence could have. He knows that this footage could expose the atrocities being committed and bring the truth to light. After completing the recording, Jack quickly sends the video to major international news channels, hoping to stir outrage and prompt action. Just then, Vander approaches Jack, interrupting his thoughts. Vander informs Jack that he will need to get out of there soon, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Jack, determined to help, suggests that he can offer Vander more money for his assistance. However, Vander shakes his head, refusing the offer. He explains that money means nothing if his life is at risk, illustrating the desperate nature of their circumstances. At that moment, Mike arrives in a helicopter, bringing news that could change everything. He informs Jack that they have gathered substantial information regarding the companies involved in the corruption. He mentions that the Volger industry is owned by two shell companies, Cinco Palmas and Northlake Allied. Mike reveals that Reyes himself signed the paperwork for Cinco Palmas LLC, indicating the deep-rooted corruption and collusion at play. Curious about Northlake Allied, Jack presses Mike for more information. Mike explains that the paperwork was filed from Philadelphia by an unknown individual. This piques Jack's interest, as he recalls that Thorne's computer had a Philadelphia number linked to several calls made just a day before Jamie's death. Jack connects the dots, revealing the timeline of events leading to the assassination. Mike, slightly taken aback, questions what that could mean. Jack explains that Max had hinted at someone else giving the orders, leaving both men in confusion over the larger conspiracy at play. Despite their revelations, Mike insists that they must leave the area immediately. When Jack inquires about Greer's whereabouts, Mike reassures him that after the elections, they will negotiate Greer's release from Reyes. However, Jack remains adamant he won't leave without Greer. Mike firmly tells him to be quiet and get into the helicopter, reminding him that this is a matter for the State Department. Reluctantly, Jack complies, knowing that their time is running short. Jack feels a surge of urgency and desperation. He picks up the phone to call Harry, hoping for assistance. He tells Harry he needs to find Max's phone. Harry responds that it is currently with MI5 and will need 2 days to secure it. Jack hangs up. As Jack steps out of the tent, Mike presents the blueprint of the President House. He emphasizes that Jack's primary mission is to save Greer. The urgency in Mike's voice is palpable, and Jack understands the stakes involved. Together with Mike and 3 other soldiers, they get into the helicopter and set off toward the President House, their minds focused on the task ahead. Meanwhile, the footage of the prison camp is broadcast across all major news channels, revealing the horrific truth to the world. The news exposes the brutalities of the regime, and the public is outraged. As a result, military forces attempt to manipulate the polls, announcing that Reyes has won the election. This announcement is met with widespread disbelief and anger from the people. Crowds gather outside the presidential house, staging a sit-in to demand justice and transparency. The army responds with tear gas and gunfire, trying to disperse the protesters, but the crowd remains steadfast, unwilling to back down. At that critical moment, Mike's helicopter lands on the roof of the President House. Jack, Mike, and the soldiers swiftly disembark and start searching for Greer. Inside the basement, Greer is locked in a cage, playing dead. As one of the soldiers approaches, Greer seizes the opportunity to launch a surprise attack, overpowering the soldier and freeing himself. He quickly makes his way toward the exit, but Mateo appears just in time. In a swift motion, Greer shoots Mateo, neutralizing the threat. With the basement now secure, Greer begins to ascend to the upper levels. Meanwhile, Jack and Mike are engaged in a firefight with the guards as they work their way through the President House. Amidst the chaos, Jack finds Greer, and together they head toward the roof for an escape. However, Greer notices that Jack is not following closely behind, and Mike quickly deduces that Jack has gone off on his own mission. Jack enters Reyes's office, determined to confront him. After taking out several guards, Jack corners Reyes, pointing a gun at him and demanding answers. Just then, Mike arrives and tries to reason with Jack, reminding him that they don't have the authority to execute Reyes on the spot. Jack, filled with rage, hesitates but ultimately decides to step back due to Mike's intervention. Outside, the crowd has grown more aggressive, breaking through the gates of the President House and storming inside. They start to vandalize the premises, expressing their fury at the fraudulent election results. As the electoral announcement is made, it is revealed that Gloria has won the election with an impressive 80% of the votes. Supporters gather outside her residence, celebrating her victory and congratulating her for the significant win. A few days later, Jack meets with Senator Chaplin to discuss the aftermath of the operation and his lingering confusion regarding the connections he uncovered. During their conversation, Jack explains that he found 2 shell companies linked to Volger, Cinco Palmas, owned by Reyes, and Northlake Allied. He acknowledges that Northlake Allied lawyers were highly skilled, making it challenging to trace any wrongdoing. However, Jack points out that Senator Chaplin made a significant mistake. When Jack had asked him to arrange their travel to London, Chaplin should not have made a direct call to the Max. Intrigued, Jack pulls out his phone and dials a number, realizing it belongs to the senator. As the phone rings, Senator Chaplin attempts to justify his actions, claiming that he was working for America's interests, aiming to dismantle China's monopoly on the tech industry due to their control over tantalum resources. Jack, unconvinced, challenges him about the murders connected to this deal. In a last-ditch effort to sway Jack, Chaplin offers him a position in Congress, but Jack respectfully declines. Just then, the FBI arrives, apprehending Senator Chaplin for his involvement in the corruption and cover-up. Jack watches as the senator is taken away, realizing that the fight for justice is far from over, but they have taken a significant step in the right direction.